We laid out a bunch of potential, and I have to remind everyone, these are potential at this point violations. But from what you have read about the subpoena, where do you see the focus of this investigation? How big of a deal is it?
I think it could be an incredibly big deal, and Tom does a really good job of laying out the point that the investigation is at. This is early days. They're gathering information. They have a basis for believing crimes have been committed. They'll take a look at what comes back and then assess whether they should move forward. But we already know an important detail about this investigation from Sam Patton's plea in the District of Columbia. In his guilty plea, he acknowledged that he arranged for donations from a Ukrainian and a Russian to the inaugural committee, knowing that that was illegal. And it's very unlikely that he kept that knowledge to himself, since he filtered at least one of these transactions through a Cypriot bank. There would be somebody on the inaugural committee side who is aware of the illegality as well. That's what SDNY is trying to figure out.
A bank in Cyprus. Remember who's very closely tied? Wilbur Ross. Okay, Matt, how hard is it to prove a quid pro quo? In this case, somebody getting access for a specific reason because they made a donation. I mean, historically, don't lots of rich and influential people go to things like the inauguration and give a whole lot of money to go?
Yeah, look, proving a quid pro quo is one of the hardest things. It's really the standard for proving bribery. And, you know, just buying access isn't in itself illegal. People can buy access to the inaugural committee. They can buy access to politicians all the time. That's basically how the United States fundraising system is set up. What you can't buy is an official action in return. And so when you look at what the prosecutors seem to be probing here, obviously they're looking at how the money came in, whether there was illegal foreign money that made its way into the inaugural committee. And they seem to be looking at how some of the money was spent. It's not illegal to waste money. It is, of course, illegal to spend money, and it's illegal to not properly disclose money. It seems that's what they're looking at. And in terms of foreign donations, the first order question, I think, for prosecutors is, did any foreign money illegally make it into the inaugural committee? The second question is, if so, what were those donors trying to buy? Were they trying to buy access to the Trump team, or were they trying to buy policy decisions from the new administration? And if so, were they successful? That's the hardest thing to prove, but at some level, that's been the underlying question of all the probes into Trump from the beginning, which is, did people get anything exchanged for money, for favors, for other things they sent into the Trump organization, into the Trump campaign?
All right, Tom, we need to remember that this inauguration was far more expensive than any other inauguration in history, more than Obama's 2009, more than Bush's 2005. And I want to share what Bush's 2005 committee chair said when he heard how much money Trump spent.
So they had a third of the staff and a quarter of the events, and they raised, what, at least twice as much as we did. So there's the obvious question, where did it go? I don't know.
No ideas?
No ideas.
What do you make of that?
Well, so I think Matt and Joyce have done a terrific job of laying out what potential crimes could be looked at here and what potential issues they could face. Another thing that they could face is, was there proper accounting being done with respect to this committee? And so one of the things that you look at is, as he just said in that sound, was, hey, you've got, you know, this was a scaled down inauguration. I mean, I remember you talking about that leading up to it, and you have these massive expenditures. Speakers only cost so much. Food only costs so much. So what did this all go to? Where could it have gone to? Another thing to remember is that Rick Gates said at the Paul Manafort trial that he had some financial improprieties as far as how he accounted for certain things that he spent with the inaugural committee, and he was involved with that. And as we know, he's been cooperating and continues to cooperate according to court documents. So what things does Rick Gates know about as far as how things were spent and how things may have accounted for? We have this gulf, as you so accurately and clearly laid out, of $100+ million in expenditures, but only 61 million of which had to be accounted for. So that's a pretty significant gap there as far as where did that money go and what could that have gone to. So I think that there are some questions not only on money coming in, but perhaps money going out. Where did it go? How was it accounted for? Those will all be things that they'll be able to see with respect to the subpoena. Obviously, here we might be in a situation where either they're going to ask for, or maybe they already have received the bank records for this committee, and that might be very telling as well. Also, Tom Barack's involvement as the chairman of this, I think, raises some interesting questions as well, and I have not seen where he has yet publicly commented on this, so it'll be interesting to hear what he says.
I don't think he has. Joyce, Tom hits on some fascinating points. There are key players, cooperating players in the Mueller investigation who are tied into this. Rick Gates was part of the planning team for the inauguration. He helped run it. As we understand, Michael Cohen actually had the information that got this whole thing started.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that we're seeing this case prosecuted not by Mueller as part of special counsel's effort, but rather independently by the Southern District of New York. I think this demonstrates that Mueller is exercising great restraint. He could have easily taken this case on within his mandate. His mandate was to look at connectivity between the campaign and Russia and whether that was an effort to influence the election, but also anything that he developed as a result of that investigation. Prior independent counsels might have held on to this and kept going for years and years, but not Mueller, who sent this up to the Southern District of New York. They'll have access, though, to all of his cooperators and information that they've developed. And in this subpoena, we note that prosecutors are also looking for evidence of money laundering, which I think is the most interesting piece that we've got here. It's not defined. Is that money laundering by Russian or Ukrainian oligarchs sending money into the campaign or into the inaugural fund? Or is it something else? But that's a piece to look for.
All right, Matt, I want to play what Chris Christie said about this last night.
I've always thought that that was the bigger problem for two reasons. One, because the Southern District of New York has no restrictions on their purview. Right? Bob Mueller has a task. It's Russian interference and potential collusion in the 2016 election. Southern District of New York is whatever the heck you want.
I don't know. You know, pick your poison, Stephanie. You know, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but it's like deciding whether you want to fight the Death Star or the Star Killer base. You know, both can blow up your planet at the end. So I'm not sure I'd want to be investigated by either one of them. But I think one of the things that this investigation makes clear is how much, you know, kind of exposure the president has on all fronts. You know, this wasn't an investigation that was referred directly from Bob Mueller, but in some ways it's his grandchild. He referred the original Cohen investigation to the Southern District of New York. That investigation produced this new investigation. And I think the problem, as Joyce was alluding to, is now the president has exposure across his campaign, his transition, his inaugural committee, his White House. And so what happens is you have witnesses who can be, you know, who are turned in one investigation. Rick Gates is the perfect example, who can now be used in another. Same thing is true for Michael Cohen. And so when you have exposure in so many fronts, you have to win on all of them. And it's very, very difficult if you're the president.
Last point.
Two quick points. One, it is interesting to me, a lot of people raise concerns that a Trump-picked U.S. attorney would not investigate people close to Trump or people involving Trump. And yet you have Jeff Berman in the Southern District of New York bringing a very substantial case against one of his earliest supporters in Congress. And you have a Southern District prosecutorial office who has had no compunction about going after not only the president's personal attorney, but also now his inaugural committee. So I think that's interesting. You know, a lot of people raise questions about that. So I think when we look back at it, we see that the Justice Department here continues to be independent, at least certainly areas outside of Washington, D.C. and the Attorney General's office.
My goodness. All right. Thank you all. Massively important conversation. I don't know, Matt. I know one thing. I don't want to be handcuffed or chained to Jabba the Hutt.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.